You don't know who you are? I know you know. You can't tell it. It's a secret.
I'm a lot of things.
All right then. Well, I'm gonna read my page on the show. Are we taping? All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to About This Aging Thing. Black don't crack, but what about the other shit? And shit for us is an acronym. It stands for sex, health, interest, and truth. And today is our interest segment. I'm so excited to have our very special guest with us today, Christopher Swain, the author of Is For Orisha. So for those of you who are into or are interested in EFI, this is a great introduction to me for adults, even though you wrote it for children, right? Is it written for children? No, it's not.
Nah, it was really written.
I thought it was a children's book.
It is a children's book, but the children's thing was just it was an excuse to get people to pick it up and look at it.
Yes, because I enjoyed reading it. So, Chris, before we get into the really get into it, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I'm Christopher Swain. I'm from Atlanta. I've lived here my entire life, but I've seen the world many times. Very strong interest in travels to Africa, where it's not like a vacation sort of thing. It's more of me doing a deep dive into myself and learning more about who I am and understand the world that we live in and why I respond to the world a particular way and why the world responds to me in a particular way.
Oh, I like that. All right, so tell us about your journey. Like, I'm really interested. I know the story a little bit because I am a big fan. But tell us about your journey to how you got to write Is For Orisha.
You mean like my initial interest or
right,
where
like
it began?
When you got started.
With the book itself or my interest in the concept?
The concept.
The concept began years ago, probably when after my grandmother transitioned. After my grandmother transitioned, it was very, very difficult for me to find peace within myself. I didn't know what to do with that energy. The thought of her being gone forever traumatized me. I had nightmares. I mean, I dreamt of her every night. And every day I would get up and see the whole world continue to go. And I couldn't figure out how the world could keep going without... I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. So listen.
How the world could keep going without my grandmother.
Yes.
So subsequently, at the same time, I was collecting African art here and there, statues, masks, and that sort of thing. And this one guy who I bought artifacts from on a regular basis, he talked about it and he said, one day I went to buy things from him. He said, Chris, when you come, you spend so much time, you're so meticulous with going through all this stuff I bring, and you seem to pick out some of the best stuff I have. He said, I'm going on another shopping trip to Africa, and you should come and go with me. And I was thinking, yeah, that sounds interesting, but I don't have money for that. But because my grandmother transitioned, there was insurance money for my sister and I when she transitioned. So I took my part of the money and I traveled to Africa for the very first time, which was a culture shock. Being a person in America who'd never been there was a culture shock. But subsequently, what happened was I met a spiritual man while I was there. And upon meeting him, he immediately started doing this reading with me. And it was totally unsolicited. And he started talking about death. He knew that what I was dealing with. So through our consultation, he gave me a place to put death in my life so that it wasn't a dark place. He made me understand the whole concept of ancestors and that now that I had someone working on my behalf on the other side, and I never had to be without her. She's always with me.
Right.
So that's what changed everything, and it started me on the course of learning more about African spirituality.
Wow. Yeah. And I don't want to get off track and start talking about mourning and loss, but I will say that I want to ask you this because I've noticed when my mom passed away, my grandparents passed away, my brother passed away. When those things happen, do you notice like shifts in your life? Like all of a sudden the door that wouldn't open for you
is wide open. It's
almost like they did. Yeah.
Yes.
So I do feel what you're saying.
Yes.
Excellent. So tell us about, so then you went from that to, where'd you go?
So from that, I started. So from there, after the initial journey to the continent, I started traveling to Africa on a regular basis. Just various spaces. But inevitably, everywhere I would go, I would find myself in a space, a spiritual, a sacred space that the average person will probably never see. And it wasn't as though I was trying to get into those spaces. They would just open up for me.
Right.
And I would be in the council of spiritual people always. And so from there, I started to grow.
Right.
Spiritually and just open opened myself to new ways of thinking. And then I went to Havana, Cuba with a group one day, and we were there, and we saw some art. We picked up some art in the market there. Met a great artist. He invited us to his home. We go to his house, and his father is there. His father was in his 80s. His father was a priest, Santos. So we're there, and his father was sitting there in his chair, and he started doing readings on the group, and there were like 7 of us. He was going one by one, just doing people's readings out loud while we were casually just hanging out in the house. This wasn't a formal kind of reading thing. He was just doing it so everybody heard everybody's reading. So I was at the end of the line, and I was thinking to myself, God, please let him get out of gas before he gets to me, because I don't know what this man's going to say about me, and I don't want everybody to hear it. So, you know, so that's where I was. So he did everybody's, and then he finally got to me, and he was looking in his chair, and he was like, and I said, oh my God, he finally went to sleep. My prayers have been answered. But he wasn't asleep.
Right.
He was in a trance.
Oh,
so
wow.
then his eyes opened. He looked at me. He goes, and you have to write a book. And I was like, okay. You know, I'm smiling, trying to be polite. He said, you have to write a book about our religion, but you cannot tell the secrets. And he said that to me, and I said, okay, you know, kind of nodded and smiled accordingly, and it was done. It wasn't until about 6 months later that reading made sense to me. In that moment, it meant nothing. I was just trying to get through the uncomfortable feeling of being in a group and having this reading done.
Right.
So I was home like 6 months later. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I sat up in the bed, and I thought, oh my God, I know what he's talking about.
You remember it.
And I was like, I know exactly what he means. He said, write a book about our religion. And I was like, okay, so I've traveled enough. I know enough about this. At the time, I had not gone through any initiation processes, so I couldn't tell secrets. So I was like, that is really interesting. And also in that same thought, it occurred to me, this book doesn't have to be academic. When people say books, I think novels and, you know, all this academia. And I was thinking, simplify it so people can receive it. Break it down so a 5-year-old can understand it. Because someone taught me that once, if a 5-year-old doesn't understand it, nobody understands it.
Right.
And because, you know, God rest his soul, Dr. Asa Hilliard once said, scholars write books to impress other scholars, not the people, not for, you know, the public. So I took all this information. From there, I started doing research on the religion, and I have a stack of papers at home about like this that I had to condense into a book for you know, for children, and write one page, you know, lines for each one of the Orishas. So it was a daunting task, but we got it done.
Yeah, you did. And I remember, you know, calling you sometime and texting you and saying, what's going on with that book, Chris?
Yeah, I'm like,
So I wanted to say this. So I don't want to get all deep, and I don't like to talk about religion or politics with folks, but I will say that a lot of us don't know this because we've been taken from our ancestry and trying to say this politically correct, and given something else. I'll say that.
Correct.
Right. And so I just want people to know that who are doing other things, right, other religions and practicing however we were taught to practice, that this does not take away from that. This I want the audience to know that this actually
it enhances.
It's almost a supplement to what you already believe in. And if you really study, most religions, which I hate the word, but most religions connect with this.
They do.
That's what I was going to say.
They
do
do.
You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes. First, let me just say, my family, they are Southern Baptists. They're going to die Southern Baptists.
That's right.
As a person born in America like we are, we have this ability to stand with a foot in two different worlds. Genetically, we're African people,
right?
But our ancestors. Our most recent ancestors were born in this country, so we have the duality of having two religious constructs that work hand in hand with each other. Right. It's just, you know, I don't ever chastise anyone for what they believe in their faith. I just want you to know what you know about it,
and where it comes from.
Don't just do it out of repetition because your parents gave it to you. And that's what took me to this, because once I started learning more about my blackness. And I started to research, and I started looking at the Bible and stuff again. I was thinking, well, where are my people? You know, I just couldn't make the connections. I've even traveled with that. And just to show how fair I am to this whole thing, it's not just a total African spirituality thing. Once I traveled to Ethiopia with this whole thing of, when I went on that trip, I was really just anti-Bible, because I was like, nobody in there black, and all my people here, you know, are chained to it. I go to Ethiopia,
everybody's never
where the spirituality is 50-50 Coptic Christian, and Islam. So the time I spent in the Coptic Christian spaces, Bibles everywhere, and everybody in them was black.
Right.
It's almost like the Creator knew where I was. I knew that I needed to see something to ground me and bring me back to where I needed to be.
Right.
So I couldn't be anti. You understand what I'm saying? So I had to find peace within the words in the Bible. It's just that it's just been redone so many times here, and the photos are all white people, so it throws us off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made sure my daughter understood both, like you said, both sides. Like I gave her the education of Ifa, and then she has the foundation of gathering with like minds. Like I explained to her why we even go to church. It's the gathering of like minds, the spirituality of that in itself. If you guys hear noises, it's because we have an extra dog here. And it's okay. You know, we're organic. We're going to let it be what it is. So, Chris, going back to you, to the book, and addressing the noises. There was something else I was going to say when you were talking about, let's do this. Can we show the book?
We can.
And then we're going to go back. We're going to talk about the illustrator in a minute.
But before we go to that, I want to say that this information, when most people think of Ifa, particularly African Americans here in this country,
let's do that.
We have to be careful of all defaulting to Ifa as a spirituality. There are hundreds and thousands of religious constructs on the continent. I think sometimes it's important to do for us to do DNA tests to find out who your tribe is,
right?
And then you do a deeper dive into what the spirituality is amongst those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of us obviously didn't come from the West Coast, from Yoruba land,
right?
So everybody can't practice Ifa. I mean, there's Palo, it's so many different things,
right.
You know. But because of the way we were. The narrative that was written around Christianity, we look to frame everything else up like Christianity. We want to put it in a nice little neat box and serve it up to people, and it's not always that way.
Right, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. That was my point about my daughter. Like I gave her a little bit of both, and I encourage her to explore all religions.
Good.
I always hesitate when I use that word. And spirituality, because of what you just said.
Right.
All right.
Even for me, this is not just didn't come from my exploration of Ifa in Nigeria.
Right.
You know, I also investigated Candomblé in Brazil, Santeria in Cuba.
Right.
You know, so I've been a lot of places. So I've seen it from a lot of different perspectives, but it's all the same thing.
And that was my point, that it's all connected. If you do enough studying,
yes,
you'll realize that, oh, wait, that's the same thing as this, but they just call it something else.
And the unfortunate part is you sometimes run to African Americans who study one or more of those things, and they will become so adamant, like, oh, this is it, and these things aren't related, they have nothing to do with each other. I'm like, no, that's not true. Don't say that. There's so many, they also because this is nature-based. This is based on nature. To understand this, to grasp this, you have a whole different approach to life.
Correct.
You appreciate life as it is. You're thankful for the sky. You look at trees different. You look at grass differently. You don't, if you're chewing gum, you don't throw gum out the window because a bird might choke on it. You have to think about those things. So when it thunders, you think of Shango. When the winds blow, you think of Oya. This is how life has to be. It's not just it's not fairy tale. It's the way, because the way you see them is the way they see you.
Right, and it's all God. I want to say it's all.
Yes.
Well, some of us don't believe that. That's why, and I'm not trying to convert anybody.
Right.
I'm just making a point that it's all God.
Oh, it
everything
is.
is God, and God is everything.
So. Oh yes, no doubt about it.
All right, can we get into the book?
Of course.
All right, because I love it. I'm gonna. Do you mind reading this? Or you want
No, you can.
Okay. I'm gonna put my eyes on y'all. So let me just show you all the book. Chris is gonna talk about. First of all, we'll talk about the art in a minute. So when you see the artwork, just don't freak out because it's so beautiful. So you saw the front of the book, you see the front of the book, and I just happened to go to what?
Actually, turn it around. The book itself, open it out all the way. The cover. The book itself, open like this, is actually what they call an Opanifa, which is a divination tray, because you see the faces of Eshu here and here. This is what you would use to cast your cowries when you have your reading from your Babalawo. So it was important to me that this book cover have an Opanifa on the top because the Orishas are contained within the book. So it's very important to have that for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So yeah, and the imagery of the Opanifa actually is one that my brother in Nigeria, Lukman Fakie, he carved it for me, so it's at my home. It's beautiful.
Everybody see that? We okay? All right, because you know when you make faces, I'm talking to the crew. I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all know how we are. We're organic. Okay, so I just happened to go to Obatala.
It just happens.
But that's who I am. But I'm gonna read this to you. All right, this is Obatala. Look at the artwork. It's gorgeous, and I love the way it's written. It's easy read. You can read a page a day. My name is Obatala, and I'm an Orisha. I'm king of the white cloth and all things that are white. I am the son of Olodumare, who gave me the job of creating the earth and humans. I'm also the father of many Orishas. I always wear white clothing as a symbol of my cool energy and pure spirit. I enjoy cotton, snails, cocoa butter, and white rice. We're going to speak to that in a minute. My color is white and my number is 8. My days of the week are Sunday and Thursday. My symbols are snail shells, ivory, mountains, white animals, and silver, and other white metals. Obatala. Let's go to, I want to talk about a little bit. When it says I enjoy cotton, snails, cocoa butter, and white rice. A lot of people don't, I know what that is. Can you tell the audience what that means?
In terms of what?
In terms of how it's used. Because I know that can be used in an altar.
It can be.
It can be. That's what I just want to,
exactly.
I just want to give a little context to
those things you would put on your altar that
yeah.
you would use in reference to Obatala.
Right.
And when it speaks of him being the son of Olodumare, Olodumare is God, basically.
Right.
And so with that, if you think about, or if people remember, I'll give a point of reference. There was a Michael Jackson video once, a song called They Don't Really Care About Us.
Right. I remember.
And there was one that was done in Brazil. And it had these drummers. You remember there was a whole big drum troop and they were dancing.
Yeah, he's dancing, yeah.
The drum crew is called Olodum. It's part of Olodumare.
Got it.
So that's where that comes from. Just want to give you a little context.
I appreciate it. That's what I wanted. That's what I want. And
This is all around us every day. We just don't see it.
A little bit of the artwork in here. So, Chris, say this again. You originally had in mind children, but it's for everybody.
This is actually it's for everyone. But when I started investigating the concept of how to approach this book, I thought it would be best to approach it in the context of just doing profiles of some of the main Orishas. And with the profiles, you get their names, their favorite colors, the things they like, the things they, sometimes the things they don't like. So you'll walk away with a working knowledge of each Orisha.
Right.
Because for myself, I started this journey when I was nearly 30 years old, which is late in life. When you think about it, because I don't want, and the thing was, I didn't want anyone to run into what I did. You don't want to be an adult and you're in the presence of people and they're speaking on this subject matter and you don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well,
particularly if some of them are white. And it makes you feel some kind of way like, well, what the hell? Why don't I know about this? And you stand there smiling, trying to be polite in your mind, going, what the fuck is this? So that's what this is about. And presented as a children's book and use a large font and all that so that our children, can learn this from early on. They'll grow up knowing this. They grow up knowing Greek and Roman mythology.
That's right.
So I think they should grow up and know African mythology as well.
I was going to say that earlier. Yeah, that's exactly what this is.
And that's how I had to sell it to the publisher, because when I initially gave this to them, they rejected. And they said it was too academic.
Right.
And then I told them, I shared with them that it was mythology. And in particular, I used Shango in the book. And I make them understand the relationship between Shango and Thor in Nordic mythology. I said, you see the axe, the hammer, and they were like, oh,
exactly
Christopher, now I get it. Oh, yeah, sure, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Because they related to them.
Exactly.
And they were able to relate because you educated them.
Exactly.
Right. So I saw Oban here. That's my daughter. And I don't have I have children, but I know. But my daughter's 27, and y'all know how old I am. And I bought books for both of us.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about just having it in my library. So thank you. Now, let's talk about the illustration.
Yes.
Start with that. Go ahead.
Yes. So the illustrator's name is Victor Mora. He's in Havana, Cuba. He's my brother in Havana, Cuba. Really interesting. My first trip to Cuba many, many years ago, I happened to go to an art market there, and I saw some artwork there, and I thought, the eyes on that are pretty interesting, and I bought it. The artist wasn't present. They were like, you would love him. He's a great guy. So I bought it, came home. When I returned to Cuba many, many years later, I saw his work again, and I kept running into his work. So then I found him on social media, started following him on social media. And when I started writing this book, I happened to look on social media one day, and he had posted all these images of Orishas, and I was thinking, how is this even possible? So I went his DMs, like, look, I'm writing this book. I have all the words. You have the images. What do you think? And Victor's a big advocate for children. He loves children. So the thought of a children's book really, really excited him. He was like, sure, brother, let's make it happen. So at that point, we started discussing the uses of the imagery and all that, and prices.
Right.
So we negotiated a price for all the paintings, because those are all actually paintings. So subsequently, I traveled to Havana and met him at a coffee shop. And the rest is history.
The rest of history. I knew you were going to say that. That's
I mean,
awesome.
it's so wonderful. As soon as when I arrived, I remember the day I arrived at the coffee shop, he knew I was coming. When I got there, he was standing in front waiting. And when I got in the car, he was just waiting to receive me.
Right.
You know, it was just beautiful. And he just hugged me. We talked. I paid him the money or whatever. Because this is how African people do. That's something we not talk about too. African people don't necessarily do exchange, immediate exchange. Like, I give you this, you give me that. Like right now, there's a trust factor because we're connected. So I paid him for the paintings. I didn't see those paintings for 2 days. Not that I thought he took my money, but we met again at the coffee shop. And he brought the big box, and he pulled them out one by one and laid them on the table. What an experience.
Wow, that's beautiful. And the artwork is beautiful. And Chris has, is it a robe? Should I call it a robe?
It is.
And it's white, and it has all the Orishas. The art is painted. It's beautiful. I should have asked you to bring that.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh God, I forgot.
I know,
And he
it's
told me to
beautiful.
bring. He told me when I went to buy those paintings. He told me to bring something with me.
Right. Oh
some
yeah, tell that story. Yeah.
He told me to bring clothing with me. But I didn't know why. So I was looking around. And I was like, man, I don't have anything I could take down here. But then I looked and I was like, oh well, here's this old white, Agbada, this white robe, and it's old and they had a couple of yellow spots on. I'm like, well, I don't really wear it much anyway. So I took it to him and I gave it to him. The day I arrived, and 2 days later, he brought it back to me. The same day he brought me the paintings, and he painted the Orishas on the front.
It's beautiful. And when I say robe, it's not a house robe. It's a robe like you would wear in a ceremony.
Correct.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Correct.
So before we go any further, let me just toast to you.
Okay.
Get your. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys what we're drinking today. I am drinking chai tea. It's one of my favorites, and Chris is drinking a pineapple blend. It's nothing alcohol in it. Cheers to you, brother. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So this has been a treat. You have any last words of wisdom? You have lots of wisdom. Let me tell y'all something. Capricorn. And yes, he is a part of the 50 plus tribe. I know he looks younger, but he is a part of the 50 plus tribe. And he did this book in your 50s, even though it was in your head forever. He actually, so it's never too late to write that book, to do the things that you want to do, finish that project. It's never too late. As long as you have the energy, the wherewithal to get it done, get it done. Don't worry about what people say, how old you are, what you should be doing. Do what you're led to do. I'll leave with that. Chris?
And I would just say, follow your spirit. It never leads you wrong. To second guess is to second guess what you already know. The first one is instinct. That's natural. That's your ori. That's the inner you speaking. Always respond to that. Second guess is you're trying to please somebody else. The first one is pleasing you.
Wow, I want to leave it right there. I was gonna do my little. Chris is married. Don't DM me about Chris. Don't DM me. He's married. Okay, let me put that out there. I don't even want to say my little last words I usually say. I'm gonna leave it right there. Can you just recap that one more time? Because that's so important.
I can.
Wow.
And see, the thing
That's
about
so
it is,
important.
and that's what I'm speaking of. When you really get in touch with yourself, spirit leads, and your mouth will say things that you don't even know. And so it's difficult to repeat them because it's just happening. Sometimes when I'm speaking to people, it's like I'm standing outside of myself, looking at myself going, what are you saying and where did that come from? But you just have to open yourself to it and be obedient to it. And always stay humble and keep your ego out of it at all times. There's no place for ego in this.
No place for ego.
No place
You're right
at all.
about that. Thank you, Chris. Thank you
you.
for giving us your time today, bringing us this wonderful book. Can you tell everybody how to get your book?
The book can be found online at all book outlets. That's Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. They all have it. You can just go in there and do a search for Is For Orisha, or do a search for Christopher Swain, and it'll come up.
Great.
And it is $14.99 softback, $19.99 hardback. And if you're in the Atlanta area and you want it autographed, just get in touch with Sabrina. I'll meet you anywhere and I'll sign up. I've been signing books all over the city, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, mine is signed. I'm so excited. And my daughter's is signed. Okay, so thank you for that. So listen, y'all, I'm your host, Sabrina, of About This Aging Thing. Black don't crack, but what about the other shit? Thank you so much for joining us today and viewing this. I hope you got all that I got out of it. And don't forget, don't count the years in your life. Count the life in your years. Peace.